Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your tangled yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Itty Bitty Kitty Adventures in Inktober. This is Volume 3, and I'm very excited to bring it to you, and I'm about to teach it for the San Rafael Public Library. Let's talk about the things that we're going to use in class today. I'm going to be working with the Micron PN Pen, the white jelly roll from Sakura. This is the number 10 that I'm going to be working with. I will also be working with the Identi Pen from Sakura. This is a thick nib pen, great for pooling ink. You can also use a Sharpie in lieu of one of these if you don't have one. I'm also going to be working with a graphite pencil and a blending stump. If you don't have a blending stump, just grab a Q-tip out of the bathroom and that will work just fine in lieu of that blending stump. You know me, I am a Prismacolor girl. Grab your Prismacolor pencils. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. And hey, if you don't have Prismacolor pencils, just grab whatever color pencils you have and play along. So today, the Itty Bitty Kitty is not so itty bitty. I'm actually working on a tile that's 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So if you don't have a 4.5 inch tile, go ahead and just grab your sketchbook, make a square that's 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and play along with us. You can also use cardstock. That's a really nice smooth surface as well. With that said, let's get started. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to gather all of your materials together. Many of you know that I like to do a little bit of a centering exercise before we start creating. So let's go ahead and take a comfortable seated position. Let your feet touch down onto the floor here. You can let your hands rest in your lap. Let your shoulders melt away from your ears. And if you're okay with it, you can allow your eyes to close for a moment. And just letting your attention come to your breath. And just feeling your breath as you breathe in through your nose and gently out through the mouth. As you inhale through the nose, feel the body expand with breath. And as you exhale through the mouth, feel the body release and relax. Inhaling through your nose, feeling your body expand. And as you exhale through the mouth, feel the body relax and release. And one more time on your own, in through the nose. And gently out through the mouth. And as you stay with your breath here for the next few moments, I thought I'd share a quote with you. And the quote goes like this. It says, "I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night." And that's by Christine Murphy. And I just thought you might really enjoy the idea of not being afraid of the night, but really just embracing the night. And since this cat is just really enjoying and embracing the evening, I thought we might take that in for ourselves. So one more deep breath in, exhaling it out, and let's begin. Let's begin by picking up our graphite pencil here. I'm going to go ahead and just start by doing my dots and my corners. And then going ahead and playing connect the dots. And you can see I'm taking my time. Now, our string today that we're going to be working with is actually a string that we've worked with several times before, but our result is going to be completely different. And I really love this technique called coffering, and it is part of the Zentangle process. And coffering you may have seen in architectural pieces where you take part of a ceiling and you drop a panel back and it makes the ceiling have texture, which is really pretty. And so we're going to bring that into our piece today. I'm going to come up to the top and make some dots on the corners here and in the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and start to create a diamond in the center of the piece. So all I'm doing is just going from one point to the other to create a diamond in the center. And if you need to turn the tile to make it work for your hands, go ahead and do so. And then just turning the tile again. So we've seen this string before, but what we're going to do with it is really fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into each of these triangles that I have in the corners here, and I'm going to do an aura. So all I'm going to do is come into these and start to bring dots into each of my corners, just like we started with. And I want them all to be as equidistant as I possibly can get them. So once I have that, I'll go ahead and I will start to aura and turn the tile to make it work for my hand. So all I'm doing is playing connect the dots with the piece here. So I'm going to go into each of my corners and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to go ahead and aura all 4 corners. You go ahead and do yours as well. So let's start to add the corners into the piece here. So what I'm going to do is in each of these triangles, I'm going to connect them to the corners with a line. So it'll look a little something like this. I'm going to turn the tile and do it again. So all I'm doing is just connecting my corners. And this starts that really beautiful coffering effect. I'm going to go over one more time and connecting my corners. So you go ahead, finish up your corners, and then when we come back, we're going to add another element into the center. So as we're building our string here, you're going to notice that we're just going to continue to work with triangles, which is really fun. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my piece so that my actual tile is on the diamond here, but you can see there's the triangle up top. I'm going to use that line from the top and I'm going to drop down to where my square is in the middle and just make a dot. I'll turn my tile again, looking for the middle, make a dot. Looking for the middle, make a dot, and last one right here. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to connect the dots again. So all I'm doing is creating another diamond inside of a square. I'm turning the tile, making it work for your hands here. So what you can see is now I've set myself up with 4 more triangles to work with in auraing. So all I'm going to do is that same process that we just did in the outside, and now we're doing it on the inside. So I'm going into each of my triangles here, and I'm going to go ahead and start to aura. Remember to breathe. Relax your shoulders. So I recognize that this is a bit of an ornate string to work with here, but gosh, it gives such a beautiful string to work with. There's so much fun shading that we're going to have with this, and so many fun tangles that we're going to put in. So once I've got my auras, I'm going to go ahead and start to connect my corners once again. You can see I'm just taking my time with those lines, just like we did before. Getting that beautiful coffering look. Super fun. And so there you have our string. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and you can see my lines are a little bit shaky, all that kind of stuff, but once we start to bring the ink into this, it's really going to have a fun effect to the piece. I love to do the technique of overdraw. For me, what it does is it gives me a little bit of confidence, and it also gets me into the zen of things. Zen is all about repetition for me, and so in this particular string we happen to have a lot of it. So I'm going to start the way that I actually started the piece by working in my frame here, and you can see I'm just letting my pen follow the piece. I love this technique. It's just for me a way to relax my brain, and also I can change up any lines that weren't working for me before. If it felt really off, I could go back in and change it up before I brought some ink into the piece, and that's why I love a good string. So once I have my frame all set up and ready to rock and roll, I'm going to go ahead and start to build that diamond that we started with here in the center. So I'm just going to come out, take my time, building that diamond. And then I'll go ahead and start to work in my triangles here. So remember, if there's any lines that weren't working for you before, if you want to clean those up before we get started with ink, you're more than welcome to. Just connecting outward towards the center. You're going to see that I'm just working my way around. You can see I'm turning the tile to make it work for my hands here. And you can also see how the ink is starting to solidify the string. It's bringing in that gravity that we're looking for. Isn't that so fun? Look at how that just really brings the whole piece together. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead again and start to come into the center and build that diamond in the center. And once I've got my diamond built, just like I did on the outside, I'm going to solidify those triangles and really get them where I want them to be. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start with our first tangle of the day. Have fun. Our first tangle of the day is actually called Kangular, but we're going to be doing a version of it called Blooming Kangular. Now, Kangular is, the fragment of it is a V with a leaf-like shape and then two lines that come in and connect. It's a really beautiful fragment, and you can add so much to it. It's just a really fun little piece. Now, to do Blooming Kangular, you have like a center point that you kind of use, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to do V-like shapes that are going to go all around the center point here. And then once I have that shape, it kind of looks like a man, and all I'm going to do is create these little leaf-like shapes with these triangles that just go back into the center. It's a beautiful tangle, really, really fun, super easy once you get the hang of it. Whoops. I was ahead of myself there. Okay, so you can see now I have an opportunity here. This is a great opportunity to double down on an opportunity. So there you go. Always interesting and fun when you have an opportunity like that. But you can see blooming Kangular. So let's start to bring this into our piece. We have these fantastic triangles to work with for blooming Kangular, and we're just going to do half of a Kangular in there. And let's go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to work on this one in the bottom here, and I'm actually going to add kind of a dot that these Kangular are going to work off of. So I have my pencil in my hand. If you want to work with your pencil too, you can. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to create this little arch, and then I'm going to add an aura, and then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a V-like shape right in the center. Now I'm going to go ahead and aura that V-like shape, and as if I was going to just go off to the side here, it would have another V off to the side, but I'm going to leave it alone. So once I've got those two auras in there, I'm going to go ahead and add my leaf-like shape. Same thing over here, and same thing over here. And then once I have that, I'll go into the sides just like so to create Kangular. Super fun, super easy. So I'm going to go through to all of my pieces on the outside edge and do the same thing. Once I've got them in, I'm going to go ahead and do an overdraw. You can see that I've picked up my pen, and all I'm doing is doing the overdraw, starting with that first V, creating that beautiful leaf in the center, and those two little triangles on either side. Go to the aura, second leaf, or petal, and then once again, another aura right here, nice leaf shape, and there you have it. So I'm going to go all the way around and ink those right in. I am going to embellish Kangular just a little bit here, just by going in and adding some nice lines right around that orb in the center here. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the outside area in here and pool my ink. So you're going to see me come in, and I have just my Micron PN pen, but you could use a thicker nibbed pen if you wanted to. And for me, whenever I'm pooling ink into an area, I just find that it really makes it have a really nice graphic feel, and it really makes the tangle come forward and has a lot more drama to it. So I'm going to go around and do that exact same thing in all the areas where I have Kangular, but look at how pretty that is when it has that ink behind it. It's really pretty, and it makes those little triangles pop out a little bit more. So have fun with this tangle. This next tangle is a really beautiful one, and it's really great for corners. So this is called Oleole, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Tangle Printemps, which is just a spiral. You'll notice that I'm going to close off Printemps just like so. Once I've had an opportunity to do that, I'm going to let it grow a tail. And then once I have that, I'm going to come right back into this joining section, and I'm going to give it kind of a body, as it were. Then I'll come back into that section and build a petal, coming back in again, build another petal, and coming back in again and building another petal. Now if we left it like this, it'd be totally beautiful, but what we're going to do is we're going to jump onto the back of that printemps and bring in another kind of soft petal, stepping down, another soft petal, and one more right here. Is that a pretty tangle or what? I really love this one. It's super, super fun. So let's go ahead and bring it into our piece. I have my pencil in my hand here. Now, the way that I liked doing this piece was to have the tangles kind of facing in towards each other. I thought it just gave a really interesting feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this corner right over here, and I'm just going to start with printemps. I'm going to let it touch the edges, and then I'll close it off. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm just closing it off. Now, once I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by working on the back side over here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to let this come down like a question mark and drop into the corner. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm working on the back, drop down like a question mark into the corner. Once I've got that, I'm going to go right back into the center here, and I'm going to build that petal-like body right there. Same thing over here. Once I have that the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead right on the back of this and start to make those petal-like shapes that are just going to attach themselves. I'm stepping down, making a smaller one, and then I'll step down and I'll let it attach to the side. I'm going to go over to the other side and I'm going to do it again. So I'm just going to come up, making that petal-like shape almost like a question mark, stepping down, and stepping down again, letting it just touch the edge. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to come back in right here, and I'm going to do the front petals, just coming in and letting them fill the space. Same thing on this side, just coming in and letting them fill the space. It's such a pretty tangle. I hope you like it too. So I'm going to go around all into these corners. So everything I just did, if you flip your piece and rewind, if you want to just do that with me again, you can rewind and do it with me again right on the other side. To ink this in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming into the center here and bringing printemps to life. You can see that I'm letting it touch the edges, and then I'm closing it off. I'll go ahead and let this roll right off the back and into the center like a soft question mark, diving off the sides, coming into center, and one more time, filling in that body right in the center, and then once again starting to fill in the space with these petals. Once I've got it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pool my ink into those negative spaces that are in the piece. And I love this for, once again, bringing in a little bit of drama around that tangle. You can see that it really gives this a lot of interest. And now I've got this really interesting triangular space in here. If you would like to, and you have the room for it, you can always put an orb in there just to make it interesting. And then pool your ink around the orb. And so that's the way I'm going to handle that tangle inside of our composition today. You go ahead and do yours, I'm going to do mine, and then when we meet back up in here, we're going to start to work on our cat. Such a fun tangle. I love the way that it fills the spaces. Really pretty, and I can't wait to show you how to shade it. It's going to be so much fun. So let's go ahead and turn the piece so that now we have a diamond shape in the center here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little horizon line for myself right here so that I have a place for my cat to sit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by bringing a flux-like shape up towards the top of the piece here. And you can see that I'm working with my pencil again. So I'm just going to create a flux shape, and it's going to drop back down again. Now once I have that, I'm going to bring in a little bit of a circle and put it right at the top of that flux shape. I'll start to bring in the cat ears. And then I'm going to have some haunches for this kitty to sit. So I'll just go ahead and bring these out like a little heart on either side. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to just round in where the neck is. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let this dive out just a little bit. So once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to bring in the tail of the cat. And I let the tail start from the side of the haunch in here because I imagined that it would just kind of come up and around. And all I'm going to do is just go up and create a little spiral. And you can see that I'm kind of making it angulated. Once I have that, I'll come back in and I will aura that tail. And you can give this, some angulation, and that will kind of give it a spooky feel, which is kind of fun. So go ahead, draw in your cat, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work with the silhouette. So I've picked up my pen here, and I'm just going to work on the outside silhouette of my cat. So I'm just following all of the outside lines and I'm ignoring all of the inside lines. You can see that I'm just bringing that around, and then I'll go and work with his tail. You can see that I'm letting it get a little bit more angulated than when I started it, but that's okay. So there's his tail. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove any of the lines that are in the center. And this is going to make it really easy for me to ink in the cat. And I'm just using my nibbed pen for this, or my kneaded eraser for this. So once I have that, I'm going to pick up a really nice puddle pen. And so for many of you, you know that I like to work with the Identi Pen. It's such a wonderful pen for doing this kind of work, and I use it all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and just start to work in by coming into these spaces and creating a nice aura all around the inside of the cat. And this is going to give me a lot of freedom when I start to puddle in. So you can see that I've got most of that worked in. And then I'll go ahead and I'll start to pool. Now for me, when I'm pooling ink, I tend to work in little circles. I find that it gives me better coverage. And if you don't have an Identi pen, you can always use a Sharpie, or if you don't have a Sharpie, you can always use a thicker nibbed Micron. any kind of thick-nibbed black pen is going to work. And if you don't have that, you could always just use a graphite pencil. If you wanted to just work with graphite and use your blending stump, you could do that as well. So you can see that I'm just working my way through the cat here and just bringing this in. Letting his little haunches get in there, and I may exaggerate those in a minute. And I think I will, so I'm just going to give those a little bit more of a pronounced feel on that cat. And then I can come up into the ears. And then I can also work my way through the tail. I'm just going to be really careful and just try to work as best I can into that tail. Super fun. And if you find that there's, a little bit of messiness in your line, you can always come back in with your Micron and clean up the edges just a little bit. That's always a nice way to kind of finish this off and have some fun with it. I won't be putting in the whiskers until the very end because I want to give all of that background a lot of color, and so I don't want to have to fight with the whiskers on this one. So go ahead, work on your cat. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add in the moon. I've got my graphite pencil back in my hand here, and I like to play with the edges of a piece, and so what I'm going to do is just very softly start to bring in that moon, but let it kind of fall off the page. And I think that kind of gives this the feeling that the moon is even bigger than what the container can hold, which is kind of cool. Now, I'm not going to ink in the moon. I actually want that moon to feel like it is part of the background, and you can see that I've picked up my little eraser here, and I'm just lightening up my lines so that when I come back in to work with that background, that it's just going to be a suggestion that that line is there, that it's not just a really hard line. Okay? So go ahead, put yours in, and then when we come back, we're going to start doing some shading in those tangles. I have two colors in my hands here that I'm going to be working with. Peacock Green, which is PC907, and then I also have in my hand the Yellow Ochre, which is PC942. Now, if you're not working with Prismacolors, what I'm looking for is a dark green and a mustardy yellow. This is a really great color combination. I love these two together. Now, if you are working with Prisma and you don't happen to have these colors, you could always substitute the Peacock Green for the Grass Green, which I think is PC909, but I could be mistaken. And then you could always just use your favorite yellow in your Prismacolor set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my green first. And for me, this peacock green is just a beautiful color. You can see that my pencil is really well sharpened up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by very lightly dusting the whole tangle. So you can see that I'm doing little circles. I'm working on the side of the pencil so that I can make quick business of the shading that I want to do. So you can see it just did a light dusting over the top of it. Nothing big here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to start by bringing a little bit of pressure right along the back side of Printemps. Can see that I'm trying to leave a little bit of white behind it so that I get a little bit of a sheen. You can see that it has a little bit of that lightness behind it. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the tile just to make it work for my hands here, and behind each line I'm going to give a little shadow. Now once I get to this piece right in here, I'm going to use a different technique, but behind it I'm going to continue to create that shadow. Remember to soften in your shoulders, relax in your facial features, meeting the challenge in a gentle way. I'm going to come back to this piece right here, and I'm going to dust from the top, nice and light. And then I'm going to come up from the bottom, and you'll notice that I'm leaving a sheen in the center. I'm going to give it a little bit of pressure at the bottom, and a little bit of pressure at the top. Already starting to love this, very pretty. Now, you know I talk about wanting to make my pencils look like watercolors, and so I'm just going to come in here with that yellow ochre and just do a little softening here and in here, and then I'll start to work my way up in here just a little bit. Notice how I'm trying to leave a little bit of light. All I'm doing is just breaking up that line of demarcation in here, keeping it interesting, but leaving some of that white. And then the same thing up in here, just a little bit, breaking it up, just like so. Now, if you wanted to use your white pencil to do some blurring of the lines, you're welcome to do so. You just want to make sure that you're not going to let this pastel out too much, because, you know, this is really meant to be more Halloween-like, and pastel, it is a little bit more soft, and so we're trying not to get too pastel-y in here, but if there's any places where you feel you need to just get in there and give it a little bit of softening, you can come in with that white pencil from your Prismacolor set and just give it a soft dusting. But you can see I'm really working to not let it get too pasteled out. Now when I zoom out, look at the difference between here and here. It completely changes the nature of that tangle, which I really, really like, and I hope you do too. I really enjoy shading that tangle. There's just something really fluid and fun about it. Well, let's go ahead and come back to Kangular. I'm going to let go of the green, but I'm going to keep that yellow around, and I'm going to pick up Cadmium Orange, which is Pc118, and then I also have Scarlet Lake in my hand, which is Pc923. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming into where these petals are down here. And I'm just going to do a very soft dusting of that light ochre all the way. This is just a foundation so that when I come back in with these heavier colors, they're going to move a little bit better. The cat had my tongue there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up that orange. Now remember, if you don't have the same colors as me, what I'm looking for is a red, a yellow, and an orange. So not to worry if you don't have them, just grab what you have and play along. I'm going to go ahead and start in with a little bit of that orange, and you can see that I'm doing a shadow that's just coming out from behind this piece. And the same thing over here. Once I have that, I'll pick up some of that red, and right behind it, I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure. I'm going to pick back up that yellow that I started with, and I'm going to start to pull that pigment around with little circles. You can see that I'm just letting it run right over the top, and then I'm lightening my touch as I move away. Same thing over here, breaking up that line of demarcation with little circles, not a lot of pressure on that pencil, and then lightening up as I move away. Same thing over here. Just love the way that that looks. It gives it a really nice softness. If you need to come back in with a little bit of white, make sure that there's nothing else on that pencil, and then come in and you can soften it up just a touch. So I'm going to go around and do all of mine. You go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we'll start to work inside of the head of the flower. I'm going to let go of those warm colors, and I'm going to start to bring in Violet and Daliah Purple. Violet is PC932, Daliah Purple is 1009, and for those of you who don't have Prismacolors, I'm working with a darker purple and more of a warm purple here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work inside of the flower head here, and I'm going to start by picking up that violet first, the darker color. And I'm just going to start to bring in a little bit of heaviness right here on the side. Now I'll come in and bring in a little bit of that Daliah Purple and let it break up that line of demarcation really, really softly. You can see that I'm pulling back into that violet in there and just giving it a nice softening there. And so if you want to, you can come back in with a little bit of that violet to create a little bit of drama. And that's how I'm going to handle the inside of the flower head. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine. Let's continue to work with our violet and our Daliah Purple here. I'm going to start by picking up a little bit of the Daliah Purple, and I'm going to be working in the corners here. You can see that my Daliah Purple is really well sharpened up, and what I'm going to do is I'm just coming in and I'm dusting in these corners here. You can see that I'm giving a little bit of space between the moon and that color. I'm going to try to leave a halo around the moon. You can see that I'm just dusting down where the cattail is and working in the negative spaces of the cattail. And then I'll come over to the other side and do the same. So I'm just creating a base, and you can see that what I'm doing is trying to leave that halo around the moon. Now once I have that the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and bring in that violet, and I'm going to let it just really hug the black line. I'm going to turn the tile to make it work for my hands here. Letting it kind of seep out just a little bit. And then I'll come back in and give it some pressure. Letting this dive down a little bit more. Same thing on the other side, bringing that violet in, working right over that Daliah Purple, gives it a really nice warmth. Love these two colors together. You know, and I do talk about this a lot. For those of you who are new to color, and you're not sure which colors pair well together, everything that I've paired together today, you could try using in another tangle and see how it works for you. And if you find it to be, you know, a great pairing, then you'll use it again. So I've just picked up my Daliah Purple, and I'm going to start to just break up that line of demarcation of where the violet is meeting the Daliah Purple, and just running it over, and you're going to see that I'm going to let it run right back in, right over where the violet is. Same thing on the other side. Just letting it run in. Breaking up that line. And I'm going to let it just soften up a little bit. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to pick up my white, making sure there's nothing else on it. And I'm going to blend. And you can see that just by using that pencil, it takes those two colors and really softens them up. They really work so well together to create that kind of spooky night sky. And just gives that a little bit of a pop. So you go ahead and play. I'm going to work on mine. I think I'm going to add a little bit more drama into my corners, but I think I've got this the way that I'm happy with it. So you go ahead and get yours, and then when we come back, we'll work on the moon. I've picked up the light ochre again, and I also have some of the orange nearby. We're going to come back into the moon here. And remember how I was talking about how faint I wanted those lines to be? So what I'm going to do is just using those lines as a way to start to bring in some of that yellow ochre right on the edge here. Just giving this a really soft dusting, wanting to create kind of a harvest moon for this cat to be looking at. Once I've got that foundation in there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up a little bit of that cadmium orange, and very, very faintly, I'm just going to run it along the edge. I'm going to take some of that yellow again and run it right over that line of demarcation. Just letting it have a little bit of heaviness on the bottom here. And get up top and just give that orb a little bit of definition. Now, once I've had a chance to do that, I am going to pick up a little bit of my graphite pencil, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of a blending stump. If you don't have a blending stump, you can always grab a Q-tip out of the bathroom. I'm taking a little bit of that graphite, and I'm just going to run it right over where that orange is. I'm trying to give this kind of a spooky feel, and so if I come in with a little bit of that graphite and do little circles, it kind of gives it a spooky moon feel. I just love the way that that looks. And you could come in with a little bit of the white, make sure that there's nothing there to really muck this up. And you can see that I'm just taking some of that white and just blending out some of that kind of like smoky or fogginess that's in the moon, which is really cool. So you can see why I wouldn't want to put in the whiskers when we first began, but now I can come back in because I've got that the way that I want it. So I've picked back up my Micron pen, and I can go ahead and I can just give some whiskers And I'm kind of making them a little bit, you know, shaky, just to give a little bit more spookiness to that cat. So have some fun with this, and then when we come back, we're going to add just a couple more things into the composition. I'm going to take some of that Daliah Purple, and I'm going to come back out to Kangular, and I'm just coming into those little triangles and putting in the little bit of purple into those triangles. Nothing too big, because those triangles are pretty small. And some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller. That's just fine. That's the nature of this tangle. It's a beautiful organic tangle. And I really love the juxtaposition that gives to the rest of the piece. Super fun, super playful. Another thing that I wanted to do is I'm going to pick up my gel pen and add a little bit of highlight to this. I'm working with my Jelly Roll 10 here. This is a white gel pen, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring a little bit of that gel pen into the darkest part of the moon here and just give a little bit of a highlight right there on the side, just to give it a little bit of interest. And you could even come over to the other side, give that a little bit of interest as well. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some stars in my sky. So I'm just going to use a little bit of that white pen and put some stars in. And I like to work in threes, so I think I might put one in over here. Super fun. And then I'll add in some highlights into the head of the flower in here. Now with these pens, you want to make sure to be really careful not to run your hand over the top of it, because it can smear and smudge. So be very mindful as you're turning the tile not to let your hand touch it. I'm going to let this dry for a minute, and then when we come back, we're going to be using our graphite pencil and a little bit of our blending stump. So what we're about to do next is really going to change this composition in a beautiful way. And so I have my graphite pencil and my blending stump in my hand here. What I want you to focus on for the next few minutes is just coming into your corners here and adding a little bit of your number 2 pencil into your corners. So you're going to see me just add a little bit into each triangle. And then I'm also going to work in the orb and give the orb a little bit of some shading. So let's go ahead and zoom in on that. I'm going to pick up my graphite blender, and I'm doing little circles to get a really nice blend, but also to get a really nice shadow going from those corners to make it feel as though the actual string itself is coffered. And see that I'm just putting a little bit of pressure in little circles. Now once I have those corners blended, you can see that I'm leaving a little sheen of light in towards the center. I will come back to one side and give it a little bit of extra pressure. So you can see that I've gone on the left side and given that a little extra pressure. I'm going ahead and blending that out, and I'll do it again on the left hand side of each corner, just a little bit of pressure, and then blending it out. I'm going to go all the way around this piece and do that very same thing in each of the corners, and you'll see that as yours starts to work its way through, that a lot of dimension is going to start to take place. So when I zoom out, notice the difference between here and here. Okay, so go ahead and do your corners, and then when we come back, we're going to do the same thing in the center. So I am going to do something similar to the outside, but not exactly the same. So I did misspeak there just for a minute. And if you went ahead and did the center anyway, you can always take an eraser and go ahead and undo something if you've already done it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the pieces that are closest to the cat. And I'm just going to come in and do a little bit of a dusting on each side of that particular part of the piece. And I'll come down in here and do the same. And then I'll go ahead and I'll blend. And that's going to give a little bit more of a coffered feeling to this as well, just by leaving some of them white. So you can see that I'm just working my way around and blending these up. Turning the tile. And you can see that that really brings a nice dimension into the piece. If you want to bring in some of that extra darkness, you can come back into your corners and add a little bit of extra darkness and go ahead and blend those out. Now, if you're like me and you end up wearing your graphite on the side of your hand, which happens pretty often, you can come back in with your white pencil and you can set your graphite. So you can see I've got my white pencil in my hand here, and all I'm doing is just running it over the graphite, and it's going to set it so that I don't have to worry about it smearing or smudging or changing in any way, just by using a light dusting of that white graphite pencil, or that white Prismacolor pencil, over the graphite. It really does make it so that you don't see the graphite moving, which is really great. So have some fun with that, and then when we come back, we're going to do some final touches. I'm going to come back to our flowers that we have right down in here, and I'm going to add a little bit of graphite right on either side of the orb and right on either side of the V that's coming out from the flower. And then I'll go ahead and I'll blend that as well in here. And then for those of you who just need to know, I did take a little bit of that graphite and just blend it out with my blending stump, and that just gives a little bit of interest to that orb. If you wanted to come in with a little bit of your white gel pen, you could come in and give this a little bit of a sheen right on the side, and that would be really interesting as well. So I'm going to go around and do that with the little flowers and then add in some white into my orbs. So I'm going to go ahead and add my chop into the piece here, and I think what I'm going to do is just let it sneak in right next to the cat. And this is just an opportunity to take a moment to look back over the piece and offer gratitude for the opportunity to create today. I'm going to just slide this over and start to bring in my original piece, which I did a couple of things differently and decided to change things up for class today. One of the things that I did differently was I added a detail into our flower in here, and I felt like I just got a little bit busy. I liked the quietness of this particular piece. It just felt a little bit softer. And then, of course, I did my stars a little bit differently. Here it kind of felt like snow, and this feels more star-like to me. The other thing that happened is that I accidentally changed up my string a little bit, and I did not do the inside of my coffer here, but I kind of like the way that it turned out. I think that it's really beautiful and elegant and a little bit different. So, you know, every time I come back, I try something, and you never know what you're going to get. One of the things that I did is I also added a little bit of a black border on here, and I thought it had a really nice correlation with the cat, but I also really like seeing the light border as well. So you are the artist here. You take yourself on that journey, right? All right. Well, if you enjoyed the class, please give the class a thumbs up or leave a nice review in the comments. Even better, hit the subscribe button, and even best, share the video with a friend. It's always fun to tangle with a friend, and it's a great way to build community. I'd love to see your creations over on our Tangled Yogi Art community page. We have a great group of students that love to share their work, and everybody does the class differently, and we all learn from each other. So I'd love to see your creations over there. All you have to do is answer a couple of security questions so that we know you're not a bot, and then you're into the group, and it's a really fun group. Well, that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. I look forward to tangling with you soon. Bye for now.